thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. The title of my talk is Life and Death in a Depoliticized Earth-Scene, a post-truth story. We liberal academics are used to condescendingly talk about the Trumps of this world as the post-truth autocrats who are nurturing those who are too stupid not to see through the post-truth rhetoric of those populist leaders. In a more reflexive way, I would like to unfold the story about our post-truth narratives and the deadlock that we are in here. And I've heard today and over the past few days quite a few examples of that deadlock. The deadlock can be summarized as follows. On the one hand, we truly believe that there are a series of smart technological managerial configurations that will save city and earth, while at the same time the socio-ecological parameters of the earth system keep on running out of control. So there's a deadlock here. It's a deadlock that we do know that our sustainable technologies are not going to save the world and the city, yet we pretend that they do. That deadlock, I think, is structured by a gap, a set of silences. It's precisely those gaps and silences that I would like to say something about. There are four themes I want to quickly go through. First, what is the Earth-Scene? What do I mean by that? How does it articulate with some of our more recent theoretical antics about living in a more human urban world? To then consider why we are simultaneously so fascinated by the notion of the Anthropocene and the Earth-Scene. It's an endless fascination that we have for it, yet we do know that that in itself is not going to save Earth and its Earth links. To then try in a conclusion to recenter or rethink a more politicized way of thinking about the Anthropocene. This is just to focus our minds a bit. These are statistics for China. China used, between 2011 and 2013, 50% more concrete, cement, than the whole of the United States in the whole of the 20th century. So that mobilization of cement is just a stand-in for the steel, the sand, the water, the coltan, the cobalt, the aluminum, etc., upon which this continuous expansion of China and many other places is predicated on. Our sustainability antics dwarf when confronted with these sort of exponential resource exploitation-based urbanization strategies. So in this short presentation, I shall refer to the Anthropocene, or better, the Earth-Scene, as the popularized term to denote a new geological era during which some agents of the human species acquired planetary geophysical agency in an Earth system that is now understood as complex, non-linear, indeterminate, structured by multiple feedback loops and heterogeneous dynamics. And indeed, the activities of some, I don't mean all humans, are an integral part of these terraforming processes. Planetary urbanization, as talked about by Lefebvre, Neil Brenner and others, structured by primarily capitalist socio-ecological dynamics and supported by dominant neoliberal policies, is of course the geographical imprint of the Anthropocene, of this Anthropocenic dynamic. Nurturing the process of planetary urbanization was and is indeed predicated upon intensifying proliferations of all manner of metabolic vehicles in the form of techno-natural intermediaries that etch the transformation of non-human stuff in myriad socio-ecological metabolic relations that reordered human, non-human assemblages, but does so in radically uneven socio-ecological and socio-economic ways. Consider, for example, how dependent are the purportedly dematerialized affective economies that animate Much of contemporary urban life, urban social and cultural life in the global north and elsewhere, IT networks, social media, smart networks, eco-architecture, big data systems and the like, how dependent they are on mobilizing a range of rare earths, like coltan, combined tantalite, upon feverish resource grabbing, often through tactics of dispossession, in often the most vulnerable, sociologically speaking, places of the world, upon the production chains that are shaped by deeply uneven and often dehumanizing socio-ecological production processes to render it useful in our smart ITC hardware, and upon a recycling process that turns much of the waste subsequently to the socio-ecologically dystopian geographies of Mumbai's or Dhaka's suburban informal wasteland. To put it simply, each time you buy a new iPhone or computer, you put a Kalashnikov in the hand of a kid in Central Africa. These capitalist forms of planetary urbanization and the socio-ecological and political economic processes that animate its combined and uneven socio-ecological catastrophe on a world scale are now generally recognized as key drivers of anthropogenic climate change and other socio-environmental transformations and crises. Most recently, the new plastic terror. The configuration of this urban metabolic relationship has now been elevated to the dignity of a global public concern. Indeed, a global urban intellectual and professional technocracy, us, has spurred a frantic search, an obsessive search for the smart socio-ecological urbanity, and seeks out the socio-ecological qualities of eco-development, retrofitting, sustainable architecture, adaptive and resilient urban governance, the making of new interspecies more than human ecotopes, and technologically innovative but fundamentally market-conforming smart eco-design. These techno-managerial dispositives that search for eco-prophylactic remedies for the predicament that we're in have now entered the standard vocabulary of both governmental, civil society and private actors, and have now been consensually established as the frontier of architectural, planning and urban design theory and practice, presumably capable of saving both city and planet, while assuring, in doing so, that civilization as we know it can continue for a while longer. So under the banner of radical techno-managerial restructuring and transition, the focus is now squarely on how to sustain the combined uneven forms of planetary capitalist urbanization a bit longer so that nothing really has to change. The obsessive proliferation of prophylactic socio-technical assemblages to make the urban sustainable and resilient coincided, as we heard this morning, with the emergence of a radical ontological shift in earth sciences, articulated around non-linearity, complexity, contingency, risk, and uncertainty. In addition, and in parallel to that, theorists from both the social sciences and the humanities mobilized these new earthly cosmologies to propose new materialist perspectives and more than human ontologies that point towards grasping early methods in more symmetrical, human, non-human, if not post-human constellations. I argue that the post-human ontologies and their associated cosmologies, in contingent articulation with the new science of radical uncertainty, non-linear dynamics, and complex non-deterministic feedback loops, have become an integral part of the proliferating techno-managerial efforts to sustain and support further the galloping process of capitalist urbanization. So despite its radical presumptions, I contend that these more than human cosmologies open up the specter for deepening particular capitalist and other unevenly distributed forms of human, non-human entanglements and it can be corralled to sustain a hyper-accelerationist, eco-modernizing and eco-gentrifying vision and practice in which science, design, geoengineering and big capital join in a phantasmagorical space to save Earth and some of its earthlings. So covering up the urban contradictions and inconsistencies of combined and uneven eco-modernization, the apparently revolutionary new material ontologies offer new storylines, new symbolizations of the Earth's past and future, and can be enrolled to perform the ideological groundwork they require. How can we account for that? How can we account for that God trick, that apparently critical and radical new cosmologist views of the Earth, whose explicit objective is and was to unsettle the modernist paths, can actually be corrupt to save the situation? Roberto Esposito's analysis of biopolitical governmentality, enhanced with Frédéric Neyrat's psychoanalytic interpretation, may begin to shed some light on this. Esposito's main claim expands on Michel Foucault's notion of biopolitical governmentality as the quintessential form of modern liberal state governance by demonstrating how today this biopolitical frame is increasingly suited, I love the word suited, by an immunological drive. That's the mission to seal off objects of government, the population, us, from possibly harmful intruders and recalcitrant or destabilizing outsiders that threaten the biohappiness, if not the sheer survival of the population. And that guarantees that life, our life, can continue to be lived. Planetary urbanization, as Posthuman and others argue, is in a deeply interconnected urban scene, deepens this drive for immunitary biopolitics. Immunity biopolitics are clearly at work, for example, in hegemonic practices and easily observable around immigration, health, or international terrorism. A rapidly expanding arsenal of hard and soft technologies is put in place, from tighter immigration laws, data profiling system, etc., to the construction of barriers of all kinds in order to keep us safe. Is it not the case that much of the urban sustainability, resilience, smart technologies and adaptive eco-managerial policies and practices that populate urban ecological interventions are precisely aimed at reinforcing the immunological prowess of the immune system of the body politic against the recalcitrant, if not threatening outsiders, like CO2, waste, bacteria, refugees, viruses, jihadis, ozone, plastics, small particles, so that life as we know it can continue. As Garcia, 1 minute, okay, as D'Olivier risks, dangers and fragilities of individuals to make them live in a peaceful manner while obscuring any form of dissension. Alain de Brossard calls this an immunitary democracy. And that's a dangerous democracy. Because the immunitary logic creates the continuous reproduction of the exposed and the exiled at the same time, and that's the flip side of immunization. I live in Amsterdam, one of the most sustainable great cities of the world. It buys its sustainability at an extraordinary cost to the outsiders, the exiled, the muted, the dying ones. That is the flip side of the immunized body. It's precisely that leads to immunization. So let me conclude, to only have one more minute, with a quote from Maria Kaika, who put it as follows recently. The immunized, that's us, become mere spectators of the suffering of others, from the cocoon of the sanctuary ecospaces, from which only hatred of the other or the distant compassion which will suffer appear as flip sides of the same immunitary distanciation. Indeed, the immunobiopolitical dispositive of urban eco-crisis management and smart eco-urbanization is rapidly disintegrating in the face of the really existing combined and uneven socio-ecological catastrophe that marks the Anthropocene, the Anthropocene or the Urbicene. The construction of urban eco-bubbles and sustainable enclaves for the privileged produces simultaneously the unprotected exiles and deepening socio-ecological destruction elsewhere. This is eco-gentrification elevated to new heights. In other words, the mechanisms that permit to make and secure life in some places end up threatening its very continuation elsewhere. Even biopolitics for some turn into thanatopolitics for others. I'll leave it to that.
My spies tell me they've just started the panel on the other side.